Good evening. I think we need to speak honestly about what may be one of the most important developments in the Middle East right now. Much of the public discussion is focused on ceasefires, negotiations, missile exchanges, and statements from Washington or Tehran, but the real story may be something deeper. The real story is that Iran's regime appears to be entering a serious internal power struggle, and in many cases, internal fractures are more dangerous than external wars. Recent reports suggest that when the latest ceasefire window was nearing expiration, the United States extended it to allow more time for talks. On the surface, that sounds like routine diplomacy, but the reason matters. According to multiple accounts, Tehran was struggling to produce a single unified negotiating position. That is a revealing sign. When a government cannot clearly decide what it wants, who speaks for it, or what it is prepared to accept. It usually means power is divided behind closed doors. Now, this should not surprise anyone. Iran's leadership structure has been under enormous strain. Senior figures have reportedly been killed, wounded, sidelined, or forced into hiding. Chains of command have been disrupted. Institutions that once functioned through hierarchy are now functioning through improvisation, and when that happens, new centers of power emerge. The central question now is simple: who is actually running Iran? Officially, there is still a formal state structure. There is a president, there is a foreign ministry, there are clerical institutions, there are security bodies. But in practical terms, many analysts now believe the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC, has become the dominant force inside the country. That matters enormously, because when military security institutions become stronger than civilian institutions during wartime, the state often changes character. It becomes more rigid, more suspicious, more confrontational, more difficult to negotiate with. And that appears to be where Iran may be headed. We have seen growing signs of conflict between pragmatic political figures who want sanctions relief, economic breathing room, and diplomatic options, and hardline security figures who believe power comes through resistance, coercion, and regional leverage. Those are two very different visions for the future of Iran. One side appears to understand that the economy is strained, public patience is limited, and endless confrontation carries costs. The other side appears to believe that compromise shows weakness, and that control must be tightened, not loosened. This struggle has reportedly affected negotiations directly. There are increasing indications that Iranian negotiators have lacked real authority. In other words, they may attend talks, speak publicly, and carry messages, but final decisions are being made elsewhere. That is a serious problem for diplomacy. No negotiation can succeed if the people at the table do not have the power to make commitments. It creates delay, confusion, mixed signals, and eventually mistrust. From Washington's perspective, the question becomes who can actually deliver an agreement. From Tehran's perspective, the question may be even more dangerous: who controls the state? Now, let's be clear. The IRGC has long been powerful. This is not new. It has influence across military affairs, internal security, strategic industries, and regional proxy networks. But what may be changing now is scale. The Guard may no longer simply influence the state, it may be overtaking it. And if that is true, the consequences are significant. First, domestic politics would harden considerably. Any reformist or pragmatic faction would likely lose further ground. Civilian institutions could become weaker. Public dissent could be met with harsher methods. Second, foreign policy would likely become more militarized. Regional relationships would be viewed less through diplomacy and more through deterrence, pressure, and asymmetric leverage. Third, negotiations with the United States would become even more difficult, because if hardliners believe time favors them, compromise becomes unlikely. Now, some people may assume that a stronger security state means greater stability. That is often not true. Sometimes it means the opposite. When one faction consolidates power rapidly during crisis, it can create fear and obedience in the short term. But it also creates resentment, inefficiency, and deeper fractures beneath the surface. States can look strong externally while becoming weaker internally. Iran now risks entering exactly that kind of period. The economy remains under pressure, war risks remain present, public trust has been damaged over years of hardship, elite competition appears to be growing, and leadership legitimacy may be increasingly contested. Those are not small issues, those are structural pressures. Now, the next question is whether a negotiated settlement can slow this process. It is possible. If pragmatic figures can secure relief, reduce tensions, and regain some authority, they may stabilize the system, but that requires unity, discipline, and compromise. Those are precisely the qualities that appear in short supply right now. If no settlement emerges, then the opposite scenario becomes more likely: a longer confrontation, more strikes, more economic strain, more internal repression, and a stronger role for the security apparatus. That would not only affect Iran, it would affect the entire region. The Gulf states would respond cautiously, Turkey would recalculate, Israel would prepare for future escalation, Washington would face a harder, less flexible adversary, and ordinary Iranians would likely bear the heaviest burden of all. That is why this story matters, because the real battle may not be only between Iran and its rivals, it may be inside Iran itself, between the state and the security apparatus, between pragmatists and hardliners, between survival through adaptation and survival through force. And history shows that when regimes reach that point, outcomes become difficult to predict. Now, none of this means collapse tomorrow. States can endure internal contradictions for years, but it does mean the Islamic Republic may be entering a new phase, one where power is narrower, harsher, and more militarized than before. If so, then the post-war Iran that emerges may look very different from the Iran the world has known for decades, and not necessarily in a better way. So while headlines focus on the next round of talks or the next exchange of threats, watch the internal balance of power, because that may determine the future of the Middle East far more than any public statement. Thank you for listening.